The phosphorus bomb goes off in his face at 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. It sears off his ear, obliterates his nose, and blinds him instantly. The cockpit fills with smoke so thick the pilot cannot see his instrument panel. The aircraft starts diving toward the ocean 300 feet below. And Staff Sergeant Henry Irwin, 23 years old, makes a decision that should be impossible. He picks up the burning bomb with his bare hands and starts crawling through the aircraft. It is April 12, 1945, and the United States Army Air Forces are preparing for another bombing run over Japan. The target is Koriyama, a city on the main island. This is not the first mission of its kind, and it will not be the last. But for the crew of one B-29 Superfortress, this day will be different in ways none of them can predict. They are about to face a crisis at 20,000 feet that will come down to seconds, fire, and one man's refusal to let his crew die. The B-29 Superfortress is the most advanced bomber in the world. It carries a crew of 12 men, each with a specific job. Staff Sergeant Henry Eugene Irwin is the radio operator. His friends call him Red because of his hair color. He is from Alabama, 23 years old, and like most of the crew, he has flown dozens of missions over Japanese territory. Today, he has an additional duty beyond his radio work. He is responsible for dropping phosphorus smoke bombs through a chute in the floor of the aircraft when the lead plane reaches the designated assembly area. Phosphorus smoke bombs are simple in concept, but dangerous in practice. They are used to mark targets and assembly points with thick white smoke. When the fuse ignites the phosphorus, it burns at temperatures between 1,100 and 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the source. The chemical reaction is violent and fast. Once phosphorus ignites, it cannot be extinguished as long as oxygen is present. It will burn through metal, through flesh, and through bone until it consumes itself or is removed. This is the tool Irwin is holding as the B-29 approaches the coast of Japan under heavy anti-aircraft fire. The signal comes through. Irwin pulls the pin on the phosphorus bomb and releases it into the chute that leads to the outside air. It should drop cleanly away from the aircraft. It should ignite in the open sky below them. But the fuse malfunctions. The phosphorus ignites prematurely, still inside the chute, and instead of falling out of the aircraft, the canister shoots back up the chute like a rocket and hits Irwin directly in the face. The impact is immediate and catastrophic. The burning phosphorus crushes his nose. It sears off one ear. It blinds him completely. His face and arms are covered in ignited phosphorus particles that burn at over 1,000 degrees. The cockpit fills with dense white smoke so thick that the pilot, Captain Tony Simrel, cannot see his instrument panel or the sky outside. The navigator has left his table to make a sighting, and in the chaos, no one can see what Irwin is doing. The B-29 begins to dive. Irwin is on fire. His flight suit is burning. The phosphorus is burning through his skin down to the bone in some places. He cannot see. He is in more pain than most human beings will ever experience, but he understands something the rest of the crew does not yet realize. The bomb is still burning on the floor of the aircraft, and it is starting to burn through the metal. Below that floor is the bomb bay, loaded with high explosives. If the phosphorus reaches the bomb load, the entire aircraft will explode. 12 men will die in seconds. Irwin does not think about his burns or his blindness. He picks up the bomb. He grabs the burning canister with his bare hands. The phosphorus is at full ignition, over 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. It burns through the flesh of his hands immediately. He tries to find a way forward, but he is blind and the aircraft is filled with smoke. He knows the layout of the B-29 from memory, but that memory is now being tested under unimaginable conditions. He crawls forward, feeling his way around the gun turret. His body is on fire as he moves. He reaches the navigator's table. It is folded down from the wall and locked in place. The navigator is not there. Irwin cannot release the latches with one hand while holding the bomb. He makes another decision. He wedges the white-hot bomb between his bare right arm and his ribcage and uses his free hand to lift the table. In the few seconds it takes to raise the table, the phosphorus burns through his flesh to the bone. He stumbles into the cockpit. The pilots cannot see him through the smoke. He finds the co-pilot's window, throws the bomb out, and collapses between the pilot's seats. The entire sequence, from the moment he picked up the bomb to the moment he threw it out the window, takes 22 seconds. Later, Irwin will say it felt like miles. The smoke begins to clear. Captain Simrel can finally see his instruments again. The B-29 is in a steep dive, just 300 feet above the water. Simrel pulls the aircraft out of the dive and immediately turns toward Iwo Jima, the closest place where Irwin can receive emergency medical treatment. The mission is aborted. Let us know in the comments where you are watching this from. Are you in the United States, Germany, the United Kingdom, or somewhere else? We would love to know who is keeping these stories alive. Meanwhile, in the back of the aircraft, the crew is trying to save Irwin's life with the limited medical supplies they have on board. The crew extinguishes Irwin's burning clothes with fire extinguishers. They administer first aid as best they can. But every time they uncover his burns to treat them, the phosphorus particles embedded in his skin begin to smolder again. White phosphorus cannot be extinguished if oxygen is present. It will continue to burn through flesh until it consumes itself completely or is physically extracted. And phosphorus is not just a burn agent. It is toxic. Irwin remains conscious throughout the flight to Iwo Jima. He is in excruciating pain, but he does not scream or panic. The only thing he asks about is the safety of the crew. Are they alive? Is everyone accounted for? Did the aircraft survive? The crew tells him yes. Everyone is safe. The aircraft is intact. They tell him he saved them. Irwin does not respond to that. He just closes his eyes and waits for the landing. The B-29 touches down at Iwo Jima. Medical personnel rush to the aircraft. When they see Irwin, many of them do not believe he will survive. His face is destroyed. His flight suit has largely burned away. In some areas, the phosphorus has burned through to the bone. His eyes are damaged. He is moved to the hospital on Guam for more intensive treatment. The doctors begin the long process of trying to remove the phosphorus particles still burning inside his body. If you are enjoying this story and want more untold accounts from World War II, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We are bringing you stories that most history books never covered. Back at headquarters, word of what happened is spreading fast through the command chain. Major General Curtis LeMay hears the report within hours. LeMay is the commanding general of the 21st Bomber Command, the man responsible for the strategic bombing campaign against Japan. He is not known for sentimentality. He is known for results and for making hard decisions under pressure. But when he hears what Irwin did, he makes a decision that is almost unprecedented in military history. He decides that Irwin will receive the Medal of Honor immediately. The Medal of Honor is the highest military decoration awarded by the United States. It is given for acts of valor above and beyond the call of duty. Normally, the approval process takes weeks or even months. There are witness statements to collect, reports to file, committees to review the case. But LeMay and Brigadier General Loris Norstad push the paperwork through in a matter of hours. They want the medal presented while Irwin is still alive, because they do not believe he will survive much longer. The Medal of Honor is approved. It is flown to Guam. Irwin is lying in a hospital bed, swathed in bandages from head to chest. He can barely move. He cannot see. But when the medal is presented to him, he is conscious enough to understand what is happening. The presentation is brief. There is no ceremony, no formation of troops, no speech. Just a general, a dying airman, and a piece of metal that represents something most people will never fully understand. Irwin receives the Medal of Honor faster than any recipient in the history of the award. Let us talk about what actually happened to Henry Irwin's body, because the numbers help us understand why no one expected him to live. The phosphorus bomb burned at approximately 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. That is hot enough to melt aluminum. Irwin held that bomb against his skin for 22 seconds. During that time, the phosphorus burned through his flesh down to the bone in multiple locations. His nose was obliterated. One ear was seared off. Both eyes were severely damaged by the initial blast. The B-29 Superfortress carried a crew of 12 men. All 12 survived because of what Irwin did. The aircraft was flying at approximately 20,000 feet when the incident occurred. After the explosion, Captain Simrel pulled the aircraft out of a dive at just 300 feet above the water. That means the crew had seconds, not minutes, to react. If Irwin had hesitated, or if he had tried to find help instead of acting immediately, the phosphorus would have burned through the floor into the bomb bay. The explosion would have destroyed the aircraft instantly. Irwin underwent 41 surgeries over the next 2.5 years. Doctors reconstructed his face using skin grafts and pioneering reconstructive techniques. They removed particles of phosphorus that continued to smolder beneath his skin. They saved one of his eyes, though his vision was permanently damaged. The medical team at Guam and later in the United States performed procedures that were experimental at the time. Some of those techniques are still used today in burn treatment protocols. Irwin was not just a patient. He became a case study in survival. Henry Irwin did not die in that hospital bed on Guam. He survived the initial injuries, the infections, the surgeries, and the long months of recovery that followed. He returned to the United States. He was promoted to Master Sergeant. He was discharged from the Army Air Forces in 1947, 2 years after the war ended. But his injuries never fully healed. The scars remained. The pain remained. The limitations remained. Irwin went on to live a full life despite everything. He married. He had children. He worked. He spoke at schools and veterans events, telling the story of what happened over Koriyama not because he wanted attention, but because people asked him to remember. He did not see himself as a hero. He saw himself as a crew member who did his job under extreme circumstances. That is how most Medal of Honor recipients describe their actions, not as heroism, but as duty. But the people who served with him saw it differently. Captain Simrel, the pilot, said that without Irwin's actions, the entire crew would have died within seconds. The navigator said he did not even realize what was happening until the bomb was already out of the aircraft. The other crew members said they could not see through the smoke, could not move, could not help. Irwin was blind, on fire, and in more pain than any of them could imagine, and he still found a way to save them. That is not just duty. That is something else. Henry Eugene Irwin Sr. died on January 16, 2002. He was 80 years old. He had lived 57 years beyond the day he was supposed to die. He had outlived many of the crew members he saved. He had seen his children grow up, his grandchildren born, and a world that had moved far beyond the war that defined his youth. But the scars never left him. The pain never fully left him. And the memory of those 22 seconds never faded. His official Medal of Honor citation reads, in part, "His instantaneous and heroic action in the face of intense pain and suffering undoubtedly saved the lives of his comrades and returned the aircraft to base." That sentence does not capture what it felt like to hold fire against your ribs while blind and burning. It does not capture the smell of your own flesh cooking or the weight of knowing that if you stop moving, 12 men die. But it is the language we use to remember acts that go beyond language. The B-29 that Irwin saved returned to base that day. It flew more missions. Other crews used it. Other radio operators sat in the seat where Irwin had been sitting when the bomb went off. And every one of them knew the story. They knew what happened in that exact spot, at that exact moment, when one man decided that his crew mattered more than his own survival. That knowledge changed how they flew. It changed how they thought about risk and sacrifice. It changed what they believed was possible under pressure. The story of Henry Irwin is not just about burns or medals or heroism in the abstract. It is about a specific moment when a decision had to be made in seconds, and the person who had to make it was already dying. He could have collapsed. He could have screamed for help. He could have tried to put out the fire on his own body first, which would have been the natural human instinct. But he did not do any of those things. He picked up the source of his agony and carried it through the aircraft until he could throw it into the open air. There are thousands of acts of courage in war. Some are remembered with medals and monuments. Others are forgotten, known only to the people who were there. Irwin's act was remembered because it was documented, because he survived long enough to receive recognition, and because the outcome was so clear. 12 men lived because of what he did. There is no ambiguity in that math, but there are countless other moments, in other aircraft, in other battles, where someone made a similar choice and no one lived to write the report. What makes Irwin's story important is not that he was unique. It is that he represents something that happened over and over again in that war, in every war. Ordinary people, put in impossible situations, doing things that should not be survivable because the alternative is watching their friends die. Irwin was a radio operator from Alabama. He was not trained for this. No one is trained for this. But when the moment came, he acted. And that action, in 22 seconds of fire and blindness, saved 12 lives and earned him a place in history that will not be forgotten. Henry Irwin's story reminds us that heroism is not about being fearless. It is about being afraid, being in pain, being blind and burning and knowing you are dying and still choosing to act. That is the standard. That is what the Medal of Honor represents. Not superheroes or movie characters, but real people who made real choices under unimaginable pressure. And sometimes, just sometimes, they survived long enough to tell us what it was like.